Okay, yes, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Alan, this is my life in Taiwan, and in today's video, we've got something a little bit different. I'm gonna be comparing this $40 Loro fan to this relatively expensive $120 Loro fan to this unbelievably expensive $480 Loro fan, and taking a look at the differences between the dishes and seeing whether or not we actually get what we pay for when it comes to eating one of the most iconic staple dishes here in Taiwan that has been keeping the country well fed for generation after generation. Also, this wouldn't be a Life in Taiwan video if we didn't have a little bit of learning or education about the history of the dish. So we're going to do that inside, where we're about to eat the cheapest of the three dishes. Let's go inside, have a chat, and get eating. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, Loro fan is a staple dish here in Taiwan, and the history surrounding its introduction to Taiwan is somewhat debatable, as some people argue that it's actually just a Chinese food that became popular in Taiwan, while other people will argue that it's 100% Taiwanese. And as you know me pretty well, I always avoid any kind of controversial topics on this channel. So today, we're just going to be focusing on the food, the flavors, and the prices. And talking of prices, my $40 Loro fan is here in all its glory. And what we'll be doing as we order the Loro fan at each restaurant today, we'll also be ordering a side dish or something that people would typically eat alongside Loro fan. And at this restaurant, their offering is Bai Tai Lu, which looks like cabbage, carrots, and some other mixed vegetables. But the first thing I want to introduce at each restaurant is the presentation of the dish. And at this price level, you're not really expecting too much in terms of presentation. But as somebody who eats this dish relatively regularly, this is exactly what I'd expect in terms of presentation. Hot, steaming rice with the meat and the sauce piled on top of it. But I think that's enough talking for now. Time to dig in, get eating. Okay, so what is there that can be said about Loro fan? Well, depending on which person you ask in Taiwan, everybody has their own specific likes and dislikes. And one of the most important differences that you'll find with Loro fan is the balance between meat and fat. Now, I'm a person that loves a bit of fat in my Loro fan, and this dish doesn't disappoint. Lots of big chunks of fat combined with some really chunky pieces of meat. So if you're a kind of person who's into fat, let's be honest, who isn't, I definitely recommend this shop for the cheaper option. Really tasty. And one interesting thing about this particular dish is you'll notice it's got a very reddy color, and that's because they use red yeast rice extract, which apparently in Chinese is hong qu. And other than giving it a very distinctive bright red color, it also offers some anti-inflammatory, antioxidant qualities. So I'm actually eating probably the healthiest food I've eaten in a while. Okay. Right, almost finished with the main dish, but while I've got some rice left, I'm gonna dig into this Bai Tai Lu. And I'm gonna just stick it into my rice. I'm not sure if that's normal, but this reminds me a little bit of just a typical gao li tai that you get at a Retao restaurant. No idea if that's the right way to eat it, but mix it up with a bit of rice, get it down the hatch. Oh, wow. Now, when I mentioned that it reminds me a little bit of gao li tai that you get in a stir-fry restaurant, the thing I like about the gao li tai is it's got a bit of crunch to it, but because this has been braised so long, just like they braise the meat, it's a little bit softer, a little bit less crunchy. So the flavor is still there, but the texture is definitely a more, maybe for a more elderly palate. Can I say that? I'm not too sure, but absolutely delicious. Shi guang guang. Time to pay the bill, get out of here, and get to the next restaurant. Let's go. And just like that, we've arrived at the next restaurant, the medium-priced level restaurant. And I have to say that as the price goes up, the light goes down. The ambiance and the decoration of this restaurant is definitely of a higher standard than the restaurant we came from at lunchtime, but I guess that's to be expected, as we actually had a little bit of trouble finding a more expensive loro fan out on the street. It just wouldn't happen. Taiwanese people, I don't think, would go for it. But here it is. This is my $120 loro fan, and I have to say I feel a little bit less comfortable talking about this one on camera, because the one I ate earlier is very normal for me, very standard eating, but this one is a little bit out of my comfort zone, so forgive me if I'm not too sure what I'm talking about. But apparently this is a banso yadan, and the pork has been replaced with Wagyu beef. And quickly, before we get into eating, I'm sure many of you are going to disagree on the names of these dishes that I'm actually eating, whether it's actually known as loro fan or rodao fan. I just call everything like this loro fan, but apparently whether you come from north, middle or south, there's different names according to how the meat is served. So please have your own argument in the comment section about what it's called. And I've also been given my side dish that I ordered, which is the speciality of this restaurant, which is a zhu da gen, like a steamed or cooked radish, but we'll get to that later. First things first, gonna get stuck in to this middle of the road loro fan. Let's do it. Okay, absolutely no surprises here. 3 times the price. Is it 3 times the value or 3 times as good to eat? Well, I have to say that the ambiance and the surroundings definitely make you feel like you're eating a much more expensive, much more high quality food. I've always been a beef guy as opposed to a pork guy anyway, so the beef definitely is definitely ringing my bell, so to speak. But one thing I want to point out is that there's little pickled cucumbers in here too. And the texture that adds to the dish is probably as noticeable as the difference between the beef and the pork. Really interesting textures, a crunch that we didn't get with the bai tai lu. So the crunch of the cucumber, the quality of the beef, and the moisture provided by the duck egg definitely gives this dish much more varied textures compared to the one we ate for lunch. I mentioned earlier at lunchtime the importance of balance between fat and meat. Well, I do feel like this one has a lot higher meat content. There's definitely not as much fat in here, probably because that's more of a cheaper meat, maybe, so it doesn't really match the standard or the price. So maybe a little bit more fat would go a long way in this one, but as I say, it's probably not, doesn't match the standard of the restaurant. And the side dish that I've ordered from this restaurant is dagenzu. Looks very starchy, and I'd compare it to what a potato would look like from the UK. But there we go. Dripping with juice and moisture. Is surprisingly good. I expected it to be a little bit bland, but whatever soup they've cooked it in and whatever peppers and spices they've added on top really gives the otherwise quite bland vegetable a bit of a kick. Before I get this finished and on to the next place, one thing I should talk about is the level of service that we got here compared to the level of service back in the lunchtime restaurant. Now, of course, the level of service here is much higher. There's waitresses, and you get given beans and a drink when you sit down. But I should say that the service at the first restaurant was absolutely amazing considering the price. The waitress came and took our orders at our seats, which is something that doesn't often happen in a very busy, very inexpensive shop such as that. So the service level at the first place was very good, but of course, with the increase in price, the level of service here is just that extra bit better. Whew. 又一碗吃光光. On to the next one. Okay, and one more time, we have made the magic transition to the third restaurant of the day. And if I felt uncomfortable at the $120 level, I feel super uncomfortable at the $480 level. And I have to tell you, it was a little bit difficult to find such an expensive loro fan in Taichung. This is the only one that came close to sort of a crazy price. If you know of any more expensive than this, then please let me know. But let's take a look at why it's so expensive. The ingredients include Wagyu beef, as with the previous $120 dish, but there's some special ingredients in here that I think bump up the price a little bit more. On the menu, they say that it comes with a sea urchin, but apparently that's sold out. So they've replaced that with some exquisite scallops, and there's an abundance of salmon eggs, and what looks to me like gold leaf caviar, but on the menu it says it's crab's eggs, so maybe I'm mistaken. But basically it's about as luxury a bowl of lorofan that I could find in Taichung. But again, I think I'm talking too much. There's only one thing to do, and that's get stuck in to this $480 lorofan. I can't believe I'm lucky enough to be trying this. Okay, so far so good. And so far, I've only really eaten the egg, the rice, and some of the ground beef. So let's get some of these more expensive, juicier ingredients. The scallop, those crab's eggs, some fish eggs. Oh my goodness, that is luxury. One big difference between the $120 and the $480 is that, yes, there's the ground beef in there, the ground Wagyu beef, but they also serve actual strips or little mini steaks of beef that I didn't get in the second dish. And they are cooked to perfection. Really, really good. So I'm gonna definitely have to give that a 10 out of 10. It's by far the most delicious, most luxurious, most scrumptious of the three that I've eaten today. But for $480, 12 times the first dish, 4 times the second dish. Is it worth it or not? Once in a blue moon, maybe on a birthday or when filming a YouTube video, it's worth it. But I would feel so guilty to everybody if I was to eat this on a regular basis. Oh my God. As you may have guessed throughout this video, I do have somebody helping me with the camera and the research. So half of this is gonna get saved for somebody special. Which means time to wrap this video up and make some kind of sense of what has happened today. The $40 lorofan that I ate was absolutely delicious, as was the $120 and $480 lorofan. So to compare them is very difficult because, of course, of the price. At the very start of the video, I asked, do we get what we pay for? I feel with the first two, we definitely got what we paid for. The third one, I think it's just too expensive. I think it's just something that you can't fathom, you can't put into context because it is so expensive. And having gold leaf on your food is just an extravagance that I would never consider doing. Not to mention that the service in the most expensive place here was a little bit colder. We had to get our own chopsticks, which are just disposable, throwaway bamboo chopsticks. And when we asked for advice on drinks and what drinks were available, we were told just look at the menu, and that was the only information we were given. So a little bit of a failure on the service part, but who knows, maybe somebody had a bad day. But yes, I think that's about it. I'll ask my helper, does it get the Taiwanese seal of approval? Thank you. Thumbs up from the Taiwanese participant. But yes, thank you so much for watching, but I think it's time to say goodbye. So as for now, and as always, I'll see you next time in My Life in Taiwan. Peace. Bye-bye.